Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi this Sunday afternoon with someone really, really special. I have been wanting to talk to Sir about this particular subject, Mr. Tilak Devasher, who's basically written, if I may say this, written the book on the Pashtuns. Quite literally, as a matter of fact, his book is an eye opener as far as the region is concerned. And for those of us, which is pretty much everyone in India who loves talking about Pakistan, I must tell you, this particular book is a must read if you want to know what is going to happen to Pakistan in the future. So, firstly, good afternoon. Welcome to the show, and it's so nice to have you back. And I look forward for learning from you what is this latest development and what do you see as the connection towards the future of Pakistan.
Thank you so much for having me across, Adi. It's nice to be back on your show, and your shows are really informative and very well crafted. So it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our discussion today,
Thank you, sir.
and thank you for your compliments on my Pashtun book. So yeah, well, it's been it is a comprehensive book, if I may say so myself, and people have appreciated exactly what you're saying. So go ahead.
Sir, the last time I spoke to you, I didn't read it. Okay, I was kind of in the middle of it. This time I've kind of read it twice, so I know what I'm talking about this time at least at the books level, sir. So
Okay.
I want to begin with the whole TTP's position, right? That's the first thing because we've seen that the TTP has linked up with pretty much everybody. I mean, you take a 3 or 4 letter organization, they've linked up with them. I won't be surprised if they have links with Al Qaeda, with ISIS, and we know it's with ETIM, we know it's with the BLA, we know it's with all sorts of groups which are there around the place. What are they trying to do, sir? Are they trying to consolidate themselves as one common force? Is it a common enemy? What is their plan when they try and consolidate like this, sir?
So let's start from the TTP from the beginning. You see, it was set up in December 2007 in reaction to what Musharraf's attack on the Lal Masjid, where bulk of the students, boys and girls who were killed, 70% of them almost, were from the tribal areas. Now, there was always already trouble in Fatah and Waziristan because under American pressure, the Pakistan army went in, broke the agreement which the tribes had, or the assurance that Jinnah had given them way back in 1947, that the army will not enter the tribal areas. So Musharraf broke that and is typically sort of commando style and went in, and the Pakistan army got a thrashing. And in 2004, then they set up this peace agreement, the Shakai peace agreement, the Saragoga agreement, the Set agreement, and there was one in Malakand. So every time they tried to push the tribes, would hit them back. The peace agreement would last for a little while and then it would break down. And in this interim, they used to organize themselves. But in 2007, they finally decided that individual, we are fighting individually. It's better to get together. So they had a 1 month long conference where people from all the 7 agencies were there. And finally, the TTP took shape, and Baitullah Masood became the leader. Then Hafiz Gul Bahadur was, I think, the number two, and Mullah Fazlullah was the other person. And then they carried out a series of revenge attacks, suicide bombings. The commandos who had attacked Lal Masjid, somebody blew themselves up in their mess, and about 20 odd people died. And there was a series of such attacks. Finally, culminated in the attack on the Peshawar school, the army public school in Peshawar, where 130 children were killed. That's when I think the Pakistan army woke up and said, we're not making a distinction now between good and bad terrorists. And they launched this the Zarbe-Azb exercise. And that pushed the TTP into, they had to almost flee from Fatah and take shelter in Afghanistan. So till about 2016-17, almost 2018, the TTP was really on the back foot. They were not able to organize their attacks. They were not able to, whatever they were doing earlier. The Zarbe-Azb exercise was successful. But I think the Pakistan army declared victory prematurely. Because once the Taliban came back into power in August 21, the TTP got a big boost. One thing that the Taliban did was they released all the TTP prisoners in Afghan prisons, including some senior leaders like Fakir Muhammad. So their strength immediately went up. Then they knew the Amir at that time, Nur Wali Masood, seems to be a very crafty sort of a person, very intelligent person. And he did a couple of things. He said he unified all the splinter groups. The groups had broken up because they were under pressure. He unified about 20 different groups, brought them under the umbrella of the TTP. So the TTP got a big boost. So at one time, they got more people released in Afghanistan. Then the splinter groups joined them back. So the TTP became rejuvenated. And it really became. So you'll find suddenly in May of 2021 or a little later, they started launching about 50, 60 attacks a month in Pakistan. And in last count in August 23, they had launched 99 attacks, according to
Wow.
Pakistani sources, though the TTP themselves claim of launching 147 attacks. There's almost more than 3 attacks a day, or maybe 4 or 5 attacks a day. So even if you discount that and you say 99, it's a huge amount of TTP attacks. So they have strengthened themselves, because of these couple of other developments. And the third thing that Nur Wali Masood said that they lost a lot of support of the people because they were targeting civilians. You see, when you go in for a suicide attack, civilians get killed indiscriminately. So the people, the local support, they're dried up, and they all started supporting the security forces. So you'll find over they are not using the weapon of the suicide bombers so much as they did in the past. The last time I think they used it was in this Peshawar mosque, which was of the police. So a lot of policemen got killed over there. So they're targeting now hard targets, the police, the army, paramilitary forces, and so on. So for these reasons, TTP has rejuvenated itself. So what you ask, what do they want? And their links with other organizations. You see, the TTP has links with the Al Qaeda, right? In fact, the Al Qaeda was closer to the TTP than they were to the Afghan Taliban because whereas the Afghan Taliban were headquartered in Quetta, Al Qaeda took shelter with the TTP in Fatah, in Waziristan, and all. So they were closer personal links, even familial links. A lot of the Al Qaeda people got married to women from Fatah. But in terms of ideology, there has now been a shift. Whereas the Al Qaeda continues to believe in global jihad, the TTP has adopted a much more nationalist line, which is that we are looking at the so-called Emirate of Waziristan. That we want our territory in Pakistan, especially in the former erstwhile Fatah. They are no longer talking about a global jihad or the global agenda that the Al Qaeda has. So, whereas there is still cooperation, there is still, friendly relations. But in terms of ideological, there's been an ideological shift of the TTP away from the global jihad agenda of the Al Qaeda. As far as the ISKP is concerned, in the past, a lot of people from the TTP had joined the ISKP. But because the ISKP and the Afghan Taliban are daggers drawn and there are clashes, it suits the TTP to have better relations with the Afghan Taliban than with the ISKP because the Afghan Taliban are in power in Afghanistan. So
Mm.
the TTP stands to benefit with a strong relationship with the Taliban than with the ISKP. So that's the relationship that we have. Of course, the TTP now also has some link ups with some of the Baloch groups. Now, here I think it's important to recognize that this is purely a tactical thing because the Baloch are a secular force, secular people, and they are fighting for independence of their land based on the socio-economic, political, and historical grievances that they have against the Pakistani state. The TTP is fighting to establish a religious kind of an identity of the area. So they will never sort of coalesce for the long
Mm.
term.
Mm.
It is a
Mm.
tactical lens ki your enemy and my enemy, we are common enemy, so we can cooperate to some extent in that. So it is acts as a force multiplier for the TTP and also for the Baloch. So I'm not sure whether it is which particular Baloch group is this, but they have some support, especially in Makran and Kalat in that area.
So the interesting thing that we are seeing is that we have these massive attacks. The size, the quantum of attacks have gone up to very daring sort of attacks where they're trying to capture areas. A lot of rumors now are saying, and it's very difficult to substantiate that, but I have seen photographs of alleged areas within KPK with the Taliban flag flying on it.
Yeah. So
Uh,
this has been, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
how do you see this development, sir?
Yeah, it's something which is uh, different in the sense that in the previous attacks, it's been limited. I think the last major attack they did was in the brigade headquarters in Zom. They were also tried. There was a major attack in the Bannu counter-terrorism department a year or two ago.
Yeah.
But this one, with the pictures that are coming, and people are talking about 100, 150 TTP plus people from the Afghan Taliban. Now, this is some. This is like a almost like a conventional attack. It's no longer a guerrilla or an insurgency, a
Yeah.
conventional attack. So that is different. Now you see, I don't think so. It's only the TTP. You see, the problem which the Afghan Taliban are facing is that their cadres have trained in the same madrasas as the TTP, the same curriculum, the same ideological underpinnings, the same training they have got. Now, the Afghan Taliban rank and file who were trained for war, trained for jihad and shahadat, are suddenly stuck in a country in which there is peace. Many of those guys have been joined the police. They are manning checkposts, and some of the young guys are saying, "This is not what we sort of signed up
Mm.
for. We are looking for war. We've got peace. We are sorted out the problem in Afghanistan, but our brethren on the other side, they are fighting the Pakistani army. So we want to go and join them and support them and fight." So a lot of them could also be these kind of people who have left the Afghan Taliban discipline and joined the TTP. In fact, you would recall that about 15 days ago, there was much a statement where the Amir Habatullah had issued an edict and in one form, not an official edict, but made it let it be known that people who go across to fight in other countries without the permission of the Amir are not doing jihad, it's just hostilities. So don't do it. Pakistan took that to mean that they're going to prevent the TTP from coming into Pakistan. That wasn't the intention at all. It was geared at the Afghan Taliban rank and file that please don't go out and think that you are fighting jihad because I have not given permission for that.
Mm.
So it is basically geared to the Afghan Taliban and not to the TTP. The Afghan Taliban line on the TTP is that it is a problem of Pakistan. Pakistan has to resolve it together with the ulama and by talking to the TTP. We have nothing to do with it. It's their problem. You solve it. So the TTP has got bolstered not only by the earlier reorganization and splinter groups joining them, but also a large number of Afghan Taliban who are frustrated with peace and are looking for a scrap, are looking to fight, who have, and they are all Pashtuns, a lot of them are, could be even similar tribes, similar kind of ideology, who have gone across into Pakistan and joined the TTP. But it is unusual for such a large number to go and attack places in Chitral.
The second most interesting thing that we are seeing is, I think you kind of shared this video with me on WhatsApp. Was this dialogue, and I'd leave you to kind of interpret it and tell us the backing for this, कि बंगालियों ने आपकी पतलूनें उतारी थी, हम चमड़ी उधेड़ देंगे.
But
That
that is
was
a
a,
different, yeah, that's the PTF, that's the Pakistan
yeah.
Pashtun Tahaffuz movement. That is
Yeah.
a peaceful movement led by Manzoor Pashtun who are talking about the constitutional and civil rights of the Pashtuns as
Pashtun.
Pakistanis. Saying that, look, the Pakistan constitution prescribes us certain rights, which the Punjabis are enjoying, which the Sindhis are enjoying. Why can't we have the same rights? Which is a civil rights movement. So that started off in 2018, when there was a big protest in Islamabad over the killing of Nakibullah Masood in Karachi by this
Yes.
encounter specialist, well, I forget his name, who had killed about 400 odd Pashtuns in encounters in Liari, in Karachi. So as a protest of that, this movement started off, Pashtun Tahaffuz movement. But the Pakistan army, can. deal with an insurgency, can deal with people who pick up the gun. They don't have a playbook to deal with civil protests. Same thing happened in then East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. They didn't know how to tackle or deal with Mujib and his program, except for shooting their way out of trouble. So
Hard. Hmm.
they have pushed the PTM to the wall, and therefore the first time, and everybody was surprised that Manzoor Pashtun has never been so outspoken and so harsh in what he said. कि पश्तून और बलोच तो आपकी खाल उधेड़ देंगे. And he said it in one context, but if it were to come to a scrap, I have no doubts in my mind that the Baloch and Pashtun together literally khal udher denge because they are
They are like that,
trained,
yeah.
yeah, guerrilla fighters. They are born and bred with weapons and fighting. They know their terrain. So the army will have a very tough time. But I think it will be to Pakistan's advantage if they don't push this peaceful Pashtun movement to pick up the gun. Because
How
if they
far
do,
is
and if they do pick up the gun and they do tie up with the TTP, you know, then it's a game. It's a force multiplier
my point is
because the
exactly
T,
that.
yeah, yeah,
My point
because
is
the
exactly
TTP
that.
and the
The push.
PTM,
Yeah,
PTM come from the same area. They're all from they're Masouds.
exactly.
They're all from yeah, yeah,
A Pashtun is a Pashtun is a Pashtun is a Pashtun.
yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
you can categorize him and throw him in different camps or put him in one cupboard and the other. But somewhere down the line, when things are going to go to that point, and that point, a lot of people are saying is not that far anymore. So, how would you analyze that?
I'm not sure because access to ground information is just through social media. We
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
any serious reporting on this issue. But yes, if you see from 2018-19, the progression till now, that they have always been pushed on the back foot. They have been no mainstream media covers them. Whatever information comes out is through social media, and they are not allowed to hold meetings. The meetings are broken up. People like Ali Wazir has spent years in jail. Another PTM leader, even though he was asked to be released by Supreme Court, he was still kept in jail. He's been picked up again. So gradually they're trying to tighten the noose around PTM and basically pushing them towards to being more violent. Because the Pakistan army will feel more comfortable dealing with a violent organization rather than with a protest civil rights movement.
Hmm.
They have
How do
no,
you see
they have in their playbook. They have nothing to deal with the civil rights movement.
that? That's what. So, how do you see the support coming out from Afghanistan? So, of course, there is not much in terms of overt, but when things do get a little riled up, we have seen statements coming out of Afghanistan saying that, okay, please back off. We've had border fights, and these are not like 15-20 minute gunfiring and this and that. These things go on for days
Yeah.
until one
And
guy
Torkham
backs
is
off.
yeah,
Yeah,
Torkham is still closed because of yeah,
yes. So,
the Pakistan has a serious problem, and they are trying to paper it over. They're not trying to get to the bottom of it and resolve it. Two issues are involved here.
so
One, you see, when the Taliban were pushed out of Afghanistan in 2001 by the US, they took sanctuary and shelter in Waziristan, in the Fatah areas. And the tribesmen who gave them shelter, support, and fought with them in Afghanistan are today in the TTP. So, as per the norms of Pashtun, if the TTP requires shelter and sanctuary today, they are bound to do it. Otherwise, it will be a totally, a dishonorable thing for them to take action against the TTP. They will not do that. So they said we'll facilitate talks with Pakistan. The talks have broken down because what the TTP want is a demerger of KPK and FATA. They want to keep their weapons with them and to impose Sharia in Malakand and the other places like that. So that is one particular basket of the relationships, deep relationship between the Afghan Taliban and the TTP. The second is the issue of the Durand line. You see, even in the 90s, Pakistan on three occasions asked Mullah Omar to recognize the Durand line. And Mullah Omar said nothing of the sort. I cannot do it. And this is mentioned in the book of the then ambassador, Taliban ambassador in Islamabad, Mullah Zaif. Again, Pakistan has been keen that the current Taliban recognize the Durand line. And they have said no, they cannot. In fact, some places they have even uprooted the fence. They said
Yeah,
this is an unresolved issue, right? And the fence divides brothers, divides a nation. And they have said this is a decision not of the government, but of the people of Afghanistan on both sides of the Durand line. So they have to take a decision. Now, we cannot
nice
take a
one.
decision and accept it. Now, Pakistan is desperate that the Afghanistan recognize the Durand line as the international border. And later on we can talk about the Durand line and the weakness in Pakistan's position. So this is the issue. So whenever things become hot, Afghanistan tells them that you cannot do this kind of a thing. And Pakistan, in their sort of bravado, they have gone inside Afghanistan. They've, I think, killed about 5 TTP leaders. They've also bombed a couple of villages. Ayman al-Zawahiri was killed, and the Taliban say by drones that took off and flew over a Pakistani territory. So they are saying, look, don't push us, don't do this. Even Sirajuddin Haqqani, who's supposed to be a Pakistan's man,
Ji.
he has said this will not be good for people of both countries. Don't think that you can just get away with this. You see, the Taliban may not have a conventional army like what Pakistan has. Afghanistan, through history, all invaders have found it's very easy to invade Afghanistan. It's next to impossible to retain it. Everybody has entered Afghanistan and then has had to leave. In recent memory, the British first, second, and third Afghan wars, the Soviet Union, the United States. You take Kabul within a week or 10 days, look what happens thereafter. So the Afghan reaction, what I've always said is Afghan time. It takes time, but they will then hit back. You cannot keep Afghanistan. Pakistan will find the same thing. They have a conventional, much stronger army. They can walk into Afghanistan. And the other fact of Afghan history is that Afghan armies have never done well against invaders or against anybody else. It is the Afghan tribal militias who have always won. They won
Hmm.
against the British, they won against the Soviets, they won against the United States. The Taliban are a tribal militia. They're not a regular army. The Afghan Defense Force, which was supposed to be a regular army and trained at huge cost by the Americans, melted away. There could be several reasons for that, but the fact was that armies have not done well. So Pakistan will find the same thing. They can enter Afghanistan very easily. Then in Afghan time, the Afghans will hit back. And they will hit back with suicide bombers, which will then devastate Pakistani cities. I think Pakistan is aware of that. Otherwise, uh, despite threatening for the last 2 years, they've been threatening the Taliban that we'll do this, we'll cross the border, we'll do that. They haven't been able to. I think they know that it'll be very, very difficult to sustain any kind of action inside Afghanistan. And the Pashtun doesn't forget. The Pashtun doesn't forget. The Pashtun said, "Who took revenge after 100 years? I took it too soon."
I mean, there's something that you took up, and it's quite amazing for me. Something like that still actually stands, which is it's amazing in both the senses that they remember who they are and where they came from. So I want to talk about, before we come to the Durand part of it, I want to talk about the whole area. If you see, uh, today Pakistan is in a place that it cannot, and I mean, I'm no authority at Pakistan, but I just very clearly know that it cannot do much. So they keep threatening for this invasion, that they will do this, they will do that. It can't be done. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the resources, they don't have the weapons. Nahi hai abhi. I mean, let's face that fact. And of course, the economics and the geopolitics will not allow it to do it. There was a point of time Pakistan would be allowed, chal theek hai, you figure out your own security. Today it won't be. What are the options in front of the army today, sir? Apart from just, you know, killing 5, 10, 15 chaps here and there, that won't solve the issue, right?
Yeah. So, that was one option, that you carry out hot pursuit, what they say, hot pursuit, or carry out retaliatory strikes. That's one. I think they're worried about the repercussions. They don't have the financial resources, and I'm sure they don't want to. deploy forces from the Indian border to this side. So that's one. Second, talk to the TTP. They've tried talking earlier, and they know that the TTP demands are non-negotiable. And while ceasefire has been held, the TTP has managed to strengthen itself. Under Imran Khan and General Faiz Amin, they allowed about 5,000 TTP persons to come, saying we will rehabilitate them, and that didn't work out. But as a result of which, 5,000 TTP fighters had entered Pakistan, and they were in Malakand and Swat and places like that. Third is operations against the TTP within Pakistan. Something like Zarbe. Now, you could do it then in 2014. It was a different situation. The entire country was with you after the APS massacre. Today, the people who are in the area in Waziristan, they don't want to move out again. Last time, what Pakistan did was about 2 to 3 million people were shunted out of Waziristan, and then
Yeah.
the Pakistan army carried out. So there's no question of we're not going to move out again. You've done it once. You destroyed our homes. You destroyed our markets. You destroyed our livelihood, and you planted mines. And a lot of our children got blown up. So they are not willing to do that. Second, they were successful at that time because of the US drone strikes. You see, all the leadership of the TTP, Betullah Masood, Nek Mohammed, Hakimullah Masood, all these people were killed by US drone strikes. Today, they don't have that option. How will they take out the TTP? And they have tried doing this operations. I mean, Musharraf was there, as I mentioned, going into Waziristan, moving a couple of brigades. It just didn't work because the terrain is such, and the TTP know the terrain much better than what the Pakistan army does. You also have the problem that the FC, for example, is all manned by the Pashtuns, and they have Pashtun brethren on the other side. So, and they know that memories are long and revenge is a big thing. So, how are they going to tackle the TTP within Pakistan? And now the TTP is also in urban areas. So, the options are very, very limited. Therefore, they are pressing the Taliban, which is the softest option that they have, that please convince the TTP to stop doing this. And the new thing that they have started is to somehow convince the Americans to come back and cooperate with them and give them military aid and assistance. Otherwise, they'll be overrun by the TTP. This whole
Same old
conspiracy
story.
thing. Yeah,
Same old
same old
story.
story. Therefore, you'll find in this recent report of the UN Analytical Sanctions Monitoring Committee, there is, they say there's a possibility that the TTP will merge with Al Qaeda. Again, try to scare the Americans. Or the TTP is going to become a regional threat and things like that. I don't think so. The Americans are buying it just yet. But Pakistan is trying. They feel this is another soft option that somebody else can come and take care of the problems that they have. So the options are very limited for Pakistan.
When we see the situation on the Durand line itself, and that's, as you said, is a very contentious area, uh, we see pockets of hard fighting, right? We see pockets of cooperation as well. But the main area that I personally see where the Pakistanis are not kind of concentrating and we don't get to hear much about is the the southwest, Balochistan, little north towards that, the KPK, Balochistan borders, basically, which is the confluence of the BLA and all these guys, where they kind of operate. And we've also got certain reports, I don't know the veracity, that the Iranians have started now flirting around with the Balochis. How do you see this Durand line evolving, sir, with everybody kind of putting their finger inside it? Uh, and how do you kind of see this developing? Because this is a potential powder keg for a fracas that wouldn't have a head or a tail. I mean, that's my whole problem. You won't know who to kind of talk to shut this thing down because everybody will be fighting everyone.
About the Iranians flirting around with the Baloch, I don't think so.
I hope
I,
not, sir.
I, you see, because the Iranians have a problem with their Baloch who are
Themselves.
Sunnis. Yeah, they have a
Mm.
problem with that. So I don't think so. They're going to be flirting around with it because it's cutting their nose to spite the face. They won't. They won't do that. They won't do that. They could do it for tactical reasons. Like even At one time, they were supporting the Taliban, despite what the Taliban were doing to the Hazaras in Bamia, purely for tactical reasons. But here, I don't think so. The Iranians will do. It's more like the TTP has got now developed links with the Baloch. You see, the problem with the Durand line is that says that it is the international border. No Afghan government since 1949 has accepted the Durand line as the international border. Zahir Shah,
That they
when he was
say.
a monarch,
Mm,
he didn't do it.
yeah,
Dawood didn't do it. The PDPA didn't do it. The
absolutely.
Mujahideen didn't
Mm.
do it. Taliban 1.0 didn't do it. Karzai and Ghani didn't. And Taliban now it happened. And the reason for this is it's important for your viewers to understand. There is a 1921, the last treaty between British India and Afghanistan was the 1921 Indo Afghan Treaty,
Mm.
which talked about the Durand Line, the border between the two. But it also had a particular clause which said that the treaty will remain in force for 3 years, and after 3 years, by giving 12 months' notice, either of the two sides, that is British India or Afghanistan, could rescind the treaty. Right? In 47, when Pakistan was created, they didn't have any negotiations with Afghanistan to reaffirm that there was no exchange of letters or anything like that. In fact, if you remember, Afghanistan was the only country that opposed Pakistan's entry into the UN initially. Of course, later on they backed out of that. But in 1949, the Afghans held a Loya Jirga, and that Loya Jirga rescinded all the treaties that Afghanistan has with British India, including the 1879 Gandamak Treaty, the Durand Line Treaty, the 1905 Treaty, the 1919 Rawalpindi Treaty, and the 1921 Indo-Afghan Treaty in Kabul. So, as far as the Afghans are concerned, there is no border. There is no recognized border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And every government says that. And therefore, the Taliban says that it is the decision of the people of Afghanistan. It's not the government's decision. Because the Loya Jirga had rescinded this. Now, if Pakistan was convinced that it is the international border, Afghanistan is a much weaker state. What is it that Afghanistan can do? Go with it. But by insisting that Afghanistan recognize the Durand Line, they recognize that this is a weakness. They recognize that actually this is not the international border, and therefore they want Afghanistan's endorsement of the Durand Line.
You
You
fall
know
in your
that
own
that
trap,
is yeah that is the catch.
huh?
Wait, you're on the stronger side. You tell the thing that we don't care whether you accept it or not. As far as we are concerned, this is the international border. Why would they make so much of song and dance with the Taliban twice, and even otherwise with the other Afghan governments, to accept this? Now, and they even try to fence it basically that this is, but the Taliban have said we will not allow any more fencing. About 90%, I think, of these fence, Taliban have said we will not allow any more fencing, and they have also uprooted the fence. So this is an unresolved issue. This has to be resolved. So
I have
this
two
is
more questions. Sorry,
yeah,
please.
this is the insecurity that
Mm.
Pakistan has vis-a-vis the Durand Line and with Afghanistan. Now, once the Taliban have said they don't recognize the Durand Line, they are actually challenging Pakistan's sovereignty in a large part. As far you ask a Pashtun or an Afghan, he will say Afghanistan stretches to Atak. यहाँ पर अफगानिस्तान, वहां पर हिंदुस्तान, कहाँ से आया पाकिस्तान?
Yeah, yeah, very clear.
So at now the TTP said we want demerger of FATA with KPK, and we want to have our own governance with Sharia in this area. So actually, Pakistan is faced with a potential Pashtun pincer on both sides of the Durand line. And they need to handle it very imaginatively. Otherwise, that old concept of Pashtunistan, a larger Pashtun entity, will get revived. And then you have the PTM also, if it gets into the fray. And then you have the mainstream Pashtun parties, the ANP and the PMAP, Pashtunwa Milli Awami Party. So it's a witch's brew, which is brewing in this part of Pakistan.
That's interesting. So, I have two more questions for you, sir, before we get into the audience who's actually pretty interested to ask you a lot of questions. So, we'll go to that. But I want to ask you a very simple little thing, sir. What is the positioning of the Taliban on this particular issue? One, the Taliban, not the Pakistani Taliban. You've got the main Taliban which is sitting there. When we see the Haqqani putting out a statement. We've seen a certain animosity building up within Afghanistan and the Taliban setup there against Pakistan. It's not been a very cordial sort of a thing. There's not been any visits and all that stuff. Previously, somebody will go and this and that. That's all stopped. They've cut that thing out. As a matter of fact, they are come down to kind of ridiculing the Pakistanis, and this is happening at the government level or whatever setup they have over there. What do you think is their game? What is their outlook towards when they look towards their east?
You see, one thing is, let's not forget that the Taliban, many of the Taliban, don't have happy memories of their stay and exile in Pakistan. Take the case of Mullah Baradar. He was picked up and thrown in jail. There are a lot of other Taliban leaders also who have been very badly treated by Pakistanis.
Yeah.
You read Zaif's book,
Hmm.
and he says the horrendous stories what the Pakistanis did to the Taliban. Second, in the last 20 years, the Taliban have now developed experience of dealing with the world. They have become very skilled at diplomacy and in talking to other countries. And for them, Pakistan is no longer the most important country. You see, in the 90s, Pakistan was the most important country because they were dependent on Pakistan for everything. Today, they're not. They have relationship now with the US and Doha. They talk to Russia, they're talking to China, they're talking to Uzbekistan, the Central Asian states, Qatar. So they are talking to a whole host of people and having links with that. And if Pakistan thinks that they can push Afghanistan, and the Taliban have realized this, that Pakistan is doing it basically for its own reasons, for own selfish reasons, and they're
Hmm.
not going to allow that. So there is this tension. Then the tension of the Durand line. There is tension over India. When Taliban took over, one of the great joys for Pakistan was that Taliban will no longer allow
India
India
out.
to come back into Kabul. The last military plane took off and all the diplomats left, and Imran Khan made the ridiculous statement that India has lost 3 billion in investments. Right, those investments are not disappearing into thin air. There are dams and buildings. Today, that India is back in Kabul.
Yeah.
The Taliban want us to reopen the projects. Mullah Yaqub, the defense minister, son of Mullah Omar, has said even we'll send Afghan army officers to train in India. We have no
Yeah.
problems with that.
They were received like
So,
heroes when they went back.
yeah, and so that's very worrying for the Pakistanis. So, for all these reasons, then the issue of the TTP. So, the Taliban is, in fact, the real, how history comes around. Pakistan was looking at strategic depth in Afghanistan all these years and decades. Today, the Taliban have got strategic depth in Pakistan because of the TTP. The TTP has got what is called, the religious terminology of Beth, allegiance, oath of allegiance to the Taliban, to Mullah Omar earlier and now to Habatullah. They are under his sort of command or protection. And as somebody said, the TTP is the Taliban's knife at Pakistan's throat. Whenever the going gets tough with Pakistan, the TTP will, let loose some sort of a thing and take care of. So for all these reasons, the relationship between Taliban and Pakistan is strained, and I think this is going to intensify and this is going to continue in the future.
Uh, you know, the most interesting part which is coming on is the last thing I want to ask you. So, of course, I want to ask you 50,000 other things, but I know you want to, keep it concise. One of the things is that the setup of Pakistan itself, sir, is today at a point of break, right? Which is not little break into pieces and stuff like that, but there is a polarization, a hardcore division within the society, politically, economically. There's a lot which is happening there. The previous time that the Pakistan dealt with an enemy like this, there was a certain amount of cohesion, right? There was still togetherness, and there was that Pakistaniyat, if I may, there. How does a Pakistan kind of deal with something like this today when that Pakistaniyat is now fading away? Because at the end of it, to beat an enemy like this, which is walking around inside you, You need some sort of societal cohesion to, you know, be together so that you can fight it. That's what we saw in Kashmir. I mean, the
yeah.
local involvement has to be there, and here it is no education, madrasas, terrible situations. Guy pays $5,000 a month. He'll probably do what the guy is telling him. How do these guys deal with a virus that could spread through society, sir? Pashtun or not a Pashtun, in any case.
Yeah. So that's a very good question, and you're right. There's so much of well, Pakistan is going through a poly crisis. There's a political crisis, constitutional implications, economic crisis. They're still recovering from floods, and now with this. And I was surprised to see the army chief, who said that he's going to lead Pakistan's economic revival from the front. This is not the army chief's job to lead economic revival. What is he doing with the TTP? Who's leading the front, the fight against the TTP from the front? If it is not the army chief. So is it that people in Pakistan have said, यार ये problem तो हम tackle कर नहीं सकते, so let's try and tackle something else which is manageable. So it is unless this is some sort of a feint, that you look at attack in the east and bark in the west, kind of learn from the Chinese. But you're right. There doesn't seem to be any cohesive policy. There is so much of
Hmm.
weakness within Pakistan. The TTP will exploited the Taliban. The Chitral attack, 100, 150 people attacking a place in a conventional form shows that the TTP sensed a great weakness in the Pakistan defensive structure that they could capitalize on. So I think increasingly, if they don't get their act together, and the Taliban are also looking at this thing very carefully. So, and I'm sure that the Chinese would be very worried that what is Pakistan doing? If their assets are not going to be protected, as it is, CPEC is plateaued out. Nothing much is happening over there. But even the existing structures, if they're not well looked after by the army, and they're talking about getting uh, 25 billion from the Saudis, 25 billion from UAE, 25 billion from Qatar. How, yeah? So you're right. The desegregation in Pakistan and the problems of Pakistan. You see, in my first book, Pakistan Quoting the Abyss, and I'll just take a minute, I had raised one important question, which I said, is then Pakistan ungovernable, or is the leadership incapable of governing Pakistan? And, I
Hmm.
had talked about the weak factors, my favorite, water, education, economy, and population. And my conclusion was that the scale of the problems in Pakistan are such that it is beyond the capacity and the capabilities of the current leadership, civil and military, to deal with it. That is the state that Pakistan has come. Unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat, unless there is leadership which has vision, which has understanding, which has courage to do what is required to be done, the only way Pakistan is headed is to the south. Their friends may bail them out. The world is IMF and country like that may bail them out, but they are really in a serious trouble. I mean, one thing which we haven't talked about in the TTP is the administrative development. The TTP has set up shadow governments, wilayas, in KPK, in FATA, in North Balochistan, in Zob. But they have a chapter in Makran and Kalat. They have two wilayas in Punjab, North and South. They have one in Gilgit Baltistan. They have got military. They've got commissions which are like ministries spread out over the course of in Pakistan. So this is it's a very serious issue for Pakistan. I mean, let's just conclude with that.
This is something I don't understand. So what you've actually brought out, and we know now because of luminaries like you who've spoken about it in great amount of detail what the problem is. But we don't see them recognizing the problem because even if the army says, "Oh, Jai Pakistan, hum ye karenge, wo karenge," and all that stuff, but the damn thing is, the reality is that the virus of corruption and ineptitude has gone so far up in the system. Today, Asim Munir is trying to project a image of clean, non-corrupt, this, that, ye, wo. But we know his history as well. I mean, the guy's Imran Khan was not a fool to catch him as well. That's why he initiated an investigation against his wife, and the whole story went south after that. So,
Also, the entire focus of the leadership, civil and military, is on the political situation.
yeah,
Everything is centers around, even though Imran Khan is behind bar, he's the focus of attention of everybody. But you don't have time for other serious issues, which are really threatening the integrity of the country.
exactly. Absolutely. Guys, let's get into your questions. We've got almost 790 people watching, but yeah, I'm a little disappointed. It's us sitting here, 255. What you guys forgotten to like? Please attack the like button, as somebody said in one of the comments. That is the way I'm going to say this in every show. Doing the shows is my job. Promoting it is yours. So please push the like button. This thing needs to spread out. People should learn about this, what sir has said, because this is a perpetual problem that we're going to be dealing with on our western front. And when there's fire, always remember splinters do come and go around here and there. The location of Chitral we've discussed day for yesterday night. It's very interesting. They've come pretty far off inside, and reports have it that the battle is still on. So, interesting subject, sir. Thank you for bringing it up. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, spread the word. Most importantly, we're at 53,000 subscribers. We need to hit 60 within the next some time. And you guys remember, right? At 75, some more stuff comes out. So, thanks so much for watching right now. Let's get into it. Indu Call, thank you so much for becoming a member of the channel. Let's take the first question. Batraji asks, who's behind all this plan of Taliban to reclaim Pakistan, or is it the great plan of balkanization of Pakistan by breaking it into many states?
No, the Taliban themselves are behind it. Nobody has to be behind it because they feel that right up to Attak were the territories of Ahmad Shah Abdali, Ahmad Shah Durrani. They lost it first because of Maharaja Ranjit Singh crossed the Indus in 1823 and captured Peshawar and other areas. And the British took over from Ranjit Singh his territories and passed it on to Pakistan. That's why they haven't accepted the Durand line. In fact, an interesting story that when Wali Khan died and President Karzai was the president, he came to offer condolences, but he said, "I'm not coming as president of Afghanistan. I'm coming in my private capacity," because they still consider Peshawar to be the winter capital of Afghanistan. He said, "I've come in my personal capacity. I'm not coming as president of Afghanistan." So for them, this is their area. अभी तक मानते हैं कि हमारा so nobody is behind it.
That's very politically astute, sir, I must say. I didn't know that. That kind of shocked me.
Despite whatever other people may think, the Afghans are one of the most astute politicians as well as business people. People underestimate them.
That's pretty astute. I mean, Simran Sidhu, what will be the state of Pakistan if China loses money, clout, and influence in the world? Amazing channel. Thank you so much for that, sir. Question to you.
China is in great danger of losing not only money in Pakistan, but the BRI itself, the kind of reaction that is coming from African countries and other, Italy and other places like that. So China is on the back foot because of its predatory capitalism. It's predatory giving out of loans. So with Pakistan will have a problem because China shares a border. They've already given out the Shakskan Valley. They have a claim over Gilgit. So Pakistan could be more serious trouble. But Pakistan has no money to repay China. That's why even though the CPEC was for about $62 billion initially, commitments, China has not invested more than 24 or $25 billion because they realized early on that Pakistan have got no capacity to repay. So China is going to really face the heat in Pakistan and other places also because of the unraveling of BRI. It was a much too over ambitious a project, especially the way China was pushing it.
Sir. Noor from Panjshir. Love India, sir. Like your show always. I have a question about Panjshir which he's asked, so we'll get into that, sir. Venki Saab, one second, sorry. Venki Saab, what if Pakistan annexes the territory along the Durand line? that it inherited from the British, or can it annex, especially after the Indo-Afghan treaty has technically expired? You've
No,
kind of
which
spoken about
territory?
the part two,
Yeah. Which territory? They already have the federally administered tribal areas. You see what the
he's
Durand
saying on the
line
other
did
side.
on the Afghanistan side, annexed the territory of Afghanistan. I think if Pakistan can manage to hold on to its own territory, that will be a
That will
big
be,
achievement.
yeah. Venki साहब क्या हो गया आप बड़ा थोड़ा you're favoring Pakistan quite a bit. I know him pretty well, sir. So
Okay.
okay, how dangerous is the Pashtun movement for Pashtunistan for Pakistan? Can the Pakistani army manage to contain this, or will it be the first domino in the disintegration of Pakistan? You've kind of
Good
hinted on the
question.
fact that they can't handle civil disobedience. Anything
Yeah.
further, sir?
Yeah. You see, um the Pashtuns are a critical mass of population. They have a hinterland, which is in Afghanistan. They have grievances, historical grievances, and current grievances. Balochistan, which is the fifth insurgency in Balochistan, are not a critical mass because they have 44% of the land area of Pakistan, but about 4 to 5% of the population. And
Population.
it's widely spread out. Pashtuns are a critical mass. And so if they don't get their act together, if they don't handle this issue imaginatively, and they have a vision of Pashtunistan, a greater Pashtun area, unifying all the Pashtun territories, either into a greater Pashtunistan, greater Afghanistan, or an independent, self-governing Pashtunistan. Now, the problem with the Pashtuns is that they lack unity because of the tribal structure. There's always rivalry between various tribes. On the Taliban, there's rivalry between Kandahar and Kabul, the hardliners and the moderates. Similarly, in all over the Pashtun areas. So, if they were to get their act together and Pakistan doesn't tackle it imaginatively, if it uses force, for example, then it could create the idea of a greater Pashtunistan, and whether it works out would also then depend on the geopolitical situation and so many other factors.
Hmm.
But yes, the seed, the idea is very much there.
I would presume that they'll start fighting amongst each other when they beat someone else. The good old
No,
Pashtun Wadis, or
yeah, so they will unite against somebody else. They will unite against the Punjabi.
yeah,
And
they'll
once
throw
the
out
Punjabi is
Pakistan, and
out, then they
then
start fight. Then they start fighting amongst themselves.
RK says China has made significant investments. They have stakes. How are they taking these attacks, sir?
I think they're very worried because these loans have been given by Chinese banks. If they don't get their money back, and therefore every time that the Chinese visit, what Pakistan does is to release some of the funds with the Chinese, which are due to the Chinese company. The Chinese companies are very upset. Many companies have stopped work because they haven't been paid. You see, initially when they went into these power plants, the rate of return is something like 22%. That made the electricity so expensive that Pakistan was not able to sell it to the consumers.
Hmm.
So then what do? Some power plants have shut down. So how do the Chinese banks recover that money? So the Chinese are worried. Therefore, instead of $62 billion investment, it has peaked at 24, 25, or somewhere around that figure. China is not making any more investment and CPEC is plateaued.
Sir, I want your opinion on this, which is about Panshir and the movement of, you know, Amarullah Saleh. Suddenly, he's become active back again on Twitter. He started abusing. Is that an ominous sign?
Abusing who?
Oh, the Pakistanis, left, right, and center.
But he's always been like that.
No,
You see, as
he
I
was
mentioned,
gaib for that 1.5 years. Suddenly, he's
yeah.
resurfaced and
So
he's.
yeah. So as I mentioned, the concept of Afghan time. You know, things happen. Things happen, but they take their time. As we are always in a hurry. We want to look in black and white. Afghanistan is always grays. You know, अब अपने टाइम में जो होगा अपने टाइम में होगा. It took the Taliban 20 years to come back, no?
So,
So that resistance against the Taliban will take time.
Rahul, thanks so much for your contribution. He says, what will be the reaction of Taliban if India takes back Gilgit-Baltistan? Is Taliban supporting ETIM? Why the Chinese are not asking Taliban to control the TTP?
Good question. But you see, I think the Taliban also recognize that their claim is only up to Atak, है ना? Not Gilgit-Baltistan or POK. So I don't think so. They will have a position, adverse position on this. Now, ETIM has been training with the Taliban, and that's one of the reasons why the Chinese were talking to the Taliban to make sure that this stops, because that is a soft underbelly of China. The ETIM and Xinjiang is a soft underbelly. So therefore, they've been in touch with the Taliban to make sure that this doesn't happen. First, they wanted to do it through Pakistan. When they found that Pakistan was not too successful, they've opened up direct negotiations with the Taliban. Why China is not, but TTP is not really a threat to China inside China. TTP has been a threat to some of the Chinese projects for which they feel the Pakistan army should be able to control. Why the Taliban? The Pakistan
Interesting.
army said they've got two security divisions, you know, to control. And if they're not able to control, then the Chinese said, well, let us send our troops in. We'll send our forces to control it.
They've been asking for that, but
Yeah.
Bhakti asks, heard a few geopolitical voices from Pakistan which have miserably failed to acknowledge the real problem itself. How should Bharat, how Bharat should handle all these issues for the sake of regional peace?
So geopolitical voices from Pakistan which have miserably failed to acknowledge the real. You mean the Pakistanis themselves don't acknowledge the real problem?
Sir,
I India. I think the most important thing India needs to do is to monitor this what is happening inside Pakistan very closely. We focus a lot of attention on Indo-Pak relations, on the nuclear issue, on the LOC violations, and so on. But internally, what is happening in Pakistan? What is the economic situation? What is the kind of wheat output? Where is the scarcity of water? Population of Pakistan is growing at 2.55%. They're already at 241 million. And earlier 2017 census, they were supposed to have reached to 41 million only by 2030-35. At this rate, they will reach 400 million by 2040. So, these are the issues that India needs to monitor very carefully to see potentially what will be the blowback as far as we are concerned. Other than that, you know, what is happening, I mean, I don't think that we have any leverage or anything to assist. See, when a country is, as Napoleon said, when a person is shooting himself in the foot, there's no need for you to do anything. If they are imploding, karne do unko yaar. What is it that you want to do? So, but we need to monitor and make sure that there is no blowback as far as we are concerned.
yeah, I mean, that's most importantly. Maitri asks interesting question. My question is slightly different one. What is the origin of the hatred for the Pakistanis? Is it because of forced Punjabi culture?
Are they resisting against Pakistan because of forced Punjabi? You see, on the origins of the Pashtuns, I've written a whole book on that. So please show this to her. This is the whole book. Please,
Guys, buy this.
or,
It's the book on Pashtuns. I mean, you can't say it better than that.
or get it from a library or whatever. So that
Yeah.
explains the whole thing. It's too long an explanation for that. But resistance against they have resisted against all foreign invaders. Anybody who thinks you can come and push the Pashtuns around, they will resist. They resisted, the British. They resisted the Soviets. They resisted the US. They are resisting Pakistan. And yes, there is a tense Pashtun Punjabi dynamic, which is very much there. That is also true. But at the same time, the Pashtuns will resist any foreign who comes and stays or outstays their welcome.
So I'm going to take 5 minutes more of yours. There are some very interesting stuff. So I'd like your opinions on this. Are there Pashtuns in Iran? How's the situation between Afghanistan and Iran? They have a border/water issue as well.
Yes, you see, these are all historical states. So at one time, uh, this whole area, the Pashtun, bulk of the Pashtun area was under control of Persia. And it was Mirwais Hotaki, way back in the 18th century, early 1705, who overthrew the Iranians the Persians from Kandahar, and then invaded Persia and destroyed the Persian Empire. Persians have always felt that Herat was part of Persia. They have historical claims over Herat. So there is that border, that historical tension is there till 1757. Ahmad Shah Durrani sets up the nascent Afghanistan state. They have a border issue on the Helmand River. 1973 is a water sharing agreement between Iran and Afghanistan, but that was not sort of
Afghanistan.
ratified. And there has been a drought. So the amount of water that has to come down the Helmand River into Iran is not there. So Iran is accusing Afghanistan of not releasing enough water. The Afghans are saying, look, pani hai nahi, so what are we going to release? So there is that issue. They don't have any mechanism. I mean, they need to sit down and discuss it, but there is an issue. Afghanistan also has an issue with Central Asia because they are building this phenomenal canal, diverting water from the Amu Darya. It's called Kosh-Tepa.
Kostepa.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Uzbekistan and other countries are very upset because that reduces their flow water there. And going to have a problem with Pakistan on the Kabul River because they want to build dams on the Kabul River. The Kabul River takes in about 17 million acre feet of water into the Indus at Attak. And if Afghanistan builds about 12 dams, which they want to, so they will consume about 5 to 6 million acre feet of water, which will then reduce the water availability for Pakistan in the Indus. And all these years, Pakistan has used this water of Kabul River as their own water and grown an additional third crop in Punjab. But if the water level reduces in the Kabul River, Pakistan is really going to have a problem because the overall water in the Indus has also reduced
Yeah,
the last couple of decades.
absolutely. Yes, sir. Uh, how safe are the Pakistani nukes and protocols? Will we see them use a tactical warhead on their own soil if taken over by TTP and pushed into a corner?
I think the Paki nukes and protocols are pretty good. They are safe, and I think the people in charge are also pretty sane. I don't
At
see
least,
them using a nuke on their own territory, on their own people against the TTP. If the Pakistan Army's conventional weaponry is not good enough to tackle the TTP, I don't see them using a nuke amongst their own population.
so Ritika has been kind of pushing on this one factor that the Asim Munir has taken over the economy and following a state-led capitalism model like China, Vietnam, and other things, and it will bounce their economy, sir. Do you think so?
See, this presumes that other countries are willing to shell up $100 billion in investments. Does Saudi Arabia have so much of money? Does Qatar and UAE, even if they have, are they willing to invest it in Pakistan such huge amounts? They will require cast iron guarantees. You see, I'll give you an example. When Musharraf, I mean, he was a dictator, he tried to privatize Pakistan steel mills and wanted to hand it over. There was resistance from the MQM, which was their own party. There was resistance from the labor unions. He wasn't able to do it. Do you think Asem Munir can do it? Recodec, they talk of the copper and gold mine. The
Yeah.
Argentinian
Yeah.
companies said we were not going to, reduce our stake. Pakistan can reduce its stake if they want Saudi Arabia to come in, but there is no way. As it is, this Argentinian company had won its case in the International Court of Arbitration, and then they went into negotiation. Otherwise, Pakistan would have to pay something like $8 billion fine for having broken the contract.
Now they've broken another contract with Iran. So
Yeah,
that's
that's a huge that pipeline IPI.
$18 billion.
Yeah, and it's $1 million a day fine.
I don't know
Then
how these guys sleep at night. I'd have
e- e-
nightmares.
they've given three terminals in Karachi port to UAE at
You,
way below the price of UAE. Pakistan today is not in a position to be choosy or get the right price for something.
sir.
They are desperate, for the basic problem is what? The problem is something different. The problem is there are structural problems with the Pakistan economy. To put it very simply, Pakistan consumes more than it produces. Therefore, they need foreign exchange to import. The two sources of foreign exchange are exports and remittances. Both have been coming down for various reasons. So they just don't have the foreign exchange. IMF estimates that over the next 3 years, Pakistan has to repay $91 $91 billion plus external financing required. $91 billion over the next 3 years.
I don't
The
think they
second
make that
issue is,
much in a month. Yeah.
and the second issue is that the tax base is very narrow.
Yeah.
So all they do is indirect taxation, which falls most heavily
Indeed.
on the people. So people are burning electricity bills. They're not able to tax the agricultural sector. They don't tax the retail sector. They're given so many subsidies. How can an economy survive at a time when your back is to the wall, and you can't increase your tax base? You continue to be a consumption-oriented economy. It just doesn't work. So by these gimmicks like this SIFC, it has been tried earlier. When Bajwa was there, a National Development Council was set up. Bajwa was part of that. The same kind of a thing, privatization करेंगे, smuggling को बंद करेंगे, dollars को we'll arraid them and all. Same thing happened for 5 days, 10 days. Then you're back to square one.
Back to square one. Rahul, thanks so much for joining as a member. Bluefin, thank you so much for your contribution. Uh, an interesting question, and this is because I think the rise of geopolitical stature of India, people are wanting to ask this question. Thanks so much for your contribution, Ashim. But is it a possibility that we take back a part of Pakistan slightly above Islamabad, including POK and GB? We can then have easy routes towards Northwest Asia and Europe through Afghanistan. Yeah, it's possible. Would we do it? Is a question.
Yeah. You see, and also routes through Afghanistan at the moment, when the situation is still what it is like, that's one. And secondly, so much depends not only on your own, what you want, it also depends on the geopolitical situation. The complication today now is GB that you have CPEC over there. You have Chinese investment, you have Chinese workers working in those areas. Though we made it very clear to China, this is our sovereign territory, and you face a risk. But still, India will have to comprehend, a lot of these issues, and you just can't march into POK and GB. I always tell people, this question is posed to me whenever I lecture, especially in defense installations.
Yeah.
And I said, पहले तो ये मुझे बताओ, do you know Gilgit Baltistan? You know the district of Gilgit Baltistan? You know the religious composition of the people? You know where is Sheena spoken? Where is Brusheski spoken? Where are the Ismailis? So I think people in Pakistan, I'm sure in many places this is information is available and people are looking at it. But I think in a general, amongst the population at large, you have to be aware that any army in any battle first has to know what is on the other side.
Other side.
You have to be prepared. Where are the roads? Where are the rivers? Where is the treasury? Where is the food grains? What is the people? Who are the people who will support you? So this is a pretty detailed kind of a thing. So right now, I mean, I'm not aware. I retired 9 years ago, so I really don't know. But it's not so easy as you think.
So, and the last one, which is always one of my favorite trivias from Venki Saab. Thanks so much for the contribution. Is Pakistan failing because of the army or in spite of the army?
You see, the Pakistan army is holding Pakistan together. If the integrity and the chain of command of the Pakistan army cracks, I don't think so Pakistan army will be able to survive. Yet, it also needs to be recognized that the crisis in Pakistan is also because of the Pakistan army. You know, the taking away so much of the defense budget, and for last 70 years, creating this hype that India is out to undo partition, and therefore we need to be militarily on par with Pakistan. The military parity with India, sorry, we need to have military parity with India, has taken away whatever money was available for development in Pakistan. So the army is both part of the problem, and it is also what is keeping Pakistan together. It's a conundrum, It works both ways. It cuts both ways.
So he always comes up with these trivias, and I really love it. Kafir Krish, Tilak ji ko naman. Keep going, Adi. Keep it up. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. This was quite an exposure, and I always say this. I love talking to you because it's such a different level of a conversation rather than the regular Pakistani rhetoric that we hear all around the time. It's always fun talking to you, and I wish and hope that you do your interactions with me more often so that we can learn a lot much more from a different perspective and from a very highly intellectual perspective, because that's something which is kind of missing uh, in our discourse, especially about Pakistan. At least people who are looking at China do read, but people who normally talk about Pakistan have not gone through the history. And as you said, do you know what's on the other side? Most importantly. So thank you so much for throwing some light. It's great to have you, and I hope to see you back very soon, guys. Before you sign off, please like this video, spread the word. That's the most important thing. Tell people of this insightful conversation so that we can get Sir back for another one very soon. Thank you, sir, and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much. And as a parting shot, despite what you said, don't forget there are over a billion Pakistan experts in India.
Oh yeah,
Everybody, everybody has a point of view on Pakistan. Adi, thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
thank you,
And
sir.
anytime you want me, I'll always be available. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, sir.